Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, August 2nd, and you're looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, which saw a 27% correction or bear market, if you will, from peak to trough from December 16th to when we got liberated in April 7th. And then we've had a subsequent 45% rally from that 14,784 up to July 31, Thursday. We hit 21,457 and then reverse lower. And you can see it followed through to the downside on Friday, sliced its 21 EMA, closed a 0.5% below that level and 2.8% above the 50. So it was down 2.24% on Friday, 472 points. Close at 2650, which is a far cry from the Thursday high of 21,457. Wow. That's a big move lower. 21,457 to 20,650. And I always, every morning, I post, the relationship between the index and its moving averages. And you always have to keep that 21 in mind and the 50. If I show you a weekly chart, you can see from prior rallies, and we're on the 15th week of a rally here, and you can see in these prior rallies since the 2022 start of the new bull market, we have these 12 to 20 week rallies, and then they sell off to the moving average. This one sliced to 21, sliced to 50, pulled back to the 40-week line, which is essentially the 200, and then it rallied up here another 16 weeks, then pulled back to the 50, rallied up 12 weeks, and then a sharp pullback to the 200. And then we've had like a 18-week rally, then had this little flat period after the election, had this tariff, whatever you want to call it, 27% bear market, and our subsequent 45% rally. Last week down 2.17%, 458 points. And yeah, this is probably the start of a little bit of a correction. The market needs it. We had some clues earlier. I went to chartreuse last week, which is a cross between yellow and green, and then switched back to green because we're making new highs. As long as we're making new highs, we're going to ride the high. But we saw, weakness in the closes, and if I go to the 15-minute chart, it'll show you these weak closes recently, and this is institutional. They show their hand near the close of the session, and a lot of these sessions here, you can see that's the 29th, this is the 28th. This is all last week. There, huge sell-off. This is after Powell spoke on Thursday, and this could be, interest rate related. But there's another sharp sell-off on Thursday, and then the trap door on Friday, where you just, it just falls out, gaps lower, and you get, the longs trapped in a lower situation where they're losing money. So you have to reduce exposure, as the market the index, I should say, undercuts to 21. So a series of how the market closes and it's closing lower. That's institutions showing their hand that they're taking profits. They're getting out of the market a little bit, and it's wise to take profits. It's always wise to take profits, I think. You never get hurt taking profits. Sure, you want to let your winners run, but the money's not in the bank until you take some profits. Anyway, we saw some of the leading stocks. Why I went to yellow is, we saw some of the leading stocks recently, prior to the Nasdaq falling out is Netflix. This is one of the big leaders coming out of this double bottom base. They got liberated on, where's the 7th here? And it's just been rallying the whole time up until it made that high on June 30th. So it's been an entire month of just selling off. All right. That's one of your leaders. Spotify, same thing. Big leader. This is one of the first, this one Netflix, one of the first ones out of the box here. And this current rally made that high of 785 on the 27th of June. And so it's been selling off and then accelerated to the downside with their earnings report. CrowdStrike, same thing, Wall Street darlings selling off. It was made a big run from 298 to 517 on July 3rd. Okay, so celebrated Independence Day with a huge sell-off the entire month of July. So those are just indications of leading stocks, leading growth stocks. selling off. And I just showed you the index where the institutions are selling into the close, which is, they're showing their hand, and this is showing their hand here. They're taking profits out of these big moves. Zscaler went from what, 164 to 318. So they're, taking some money off the table. Not the end of the world. It's not that they don't hate these stocks. Quite the contrary. They love these stocks, but it's just time to take profits. They made big runs, okay? And then don't give up on them. These will return, and institutions love these stocks, but just right now they're correcting ahead of the index. And if I go back to the index, which I don't want to spend a lot of time in the index because we don't trade the index. I don't trade the index, and I'm not even going to look at the SPY. But this is, telling you that there's some selling going on here. Below the 21, you got to reduce exposure. And this could, things move very quickly now. This could pull back to the, what did I say, 2.8% below the 50. It could pull back to the 50 on Monday and bounce, next week. Things move very quick and very violent to the downside. And, it takes a little longer to the upside. But yeah, what is it? Stairs up, elevator down. So, this could happen quickly. So just, be vigilant, be open-minded, be flexible, and, have your watch list ready. But, you got to reduce exposure because you don't know how low this is going to go and you don't know how long that's going to last. All right, I'm going to get to earnings. This weekly review video, just going to review some earnings from last week. I'm going to go through some themes and then some of my trades from last week, and then look forward to next week, earnings reports and some stocks. All right, Microsoft reported, nice response, then pulled back to its five. I still have this on the five because leading stocks are finding support at the five. We'll see if it, crashes through the five and down to the 21, but they had a strong report. You can see the solid accelerating sales growth here, 12, 13, 18, earnings growth, 10, 18, 24%. That's what you look for in a stock. And it's kind of buy the rumors, sell the news type of scenario. We knew these companies the estimates were low and they were going to kind of crush it here. And Meta certainly did. But a pullback to the five or even the 21 is to be expected here, and had a nice gap up, what, 11%. That's a nice power earnings gap, but giving some back on Friday. Yeah, I think all they can do is deliver the goods, right? Amazon did not, and it sold off sharply, undercut the 50 there. I don't expect it to rally back through the 50 anytime soon. Probably come back to this 200 here, which is 209.57, call it 210. Apple reported, finally, they got some growth here, double digit sales growth, 4, 5, 10, not bad. And the earnings growth, 8 to 12, I mean, not bad for Apple. I was pleasantly surprised. The stock still sold off, and those four companies are going to drive the index because of the sheer size of, 3 trillion. And Microsoft, it eclipsed 4 trillion, closed about what, 3.9. So these are massive companies that move the indexes. All right. Some other companies, and I'm not going to go through chronological order. I'm just going to go through in the way I wrote them down. And this is Reddit. This is one that I'm interested in. Just a phenomenal report from Reddit. The raised guidance, they're hitting on all cylinders. Yeah, it was up 17% on a day where the Nasdaq sold off, what did I say, 2.24%. So that is a nice breakout. To me, this is a power earnings gap above that 164.55 with 243% above the average 50-day volume. Yeah, 17% move. That is definitely one not to ignore, Dan. A couple other ones that you probably should ignore. Coinbase, not a great report. I mean, when you see big red numbers here, that I kind of shy away from stuff, even though sometimes technically they trade higher, but ooh, fundamentally this thing not looking too good there. And I'm going to move on. That hurts my eyeballs. IRTC, a breakout from that 157.13 level. To me, that's, power earnings gap, no doubt about it. 164.97 was the close, up 17% on nearly 300% above average daily volume. Uh, iRhythm. So it definitely has the rhythm. Rhythm Nation, says Janet Jackson. All right, Appfolio. I call it Appfolio because I'm a fool not to own this thing. Up what, 20% with nearly 300% above average daily volume. You can see this base here. This is a big, long base. And the bigger the base, not the higher in space, it's not the case. You just need some sort of a base. And that's a nice base from last July. So this is a year long in the making. And you could see this earnings line heading north. You could see the blue dot. I mean, there's a lot to like here with Appfolio. I'm making a video with these power earnings gap. I'm going to try to include the top, 10, which is going to be hard for me because there's a lot of them, but you need to monitor these things and see how they behave because that's a tell on the market as well as how these gaps, do they just sell off? Because in bear markets and correction times, they just sell off and come right back to the pivot point. Choppy times, they could probably chop around or make new highs. And then bull markets or in uptrends, they usually just gap and go. So it's very important to look at these top 10. I'm going to put that video out probably Sunday when I get time. I have an early tea time this morning, so I'm not going to do it today. GLW, glowworm, Corning glass. Yeah, had a nice gap up, pulled back on Friday like everything else, but that's a nice move, 12% move. So obviously a positive power earnings gap, which I think qualifies for my video of the top 10, like ESPN top 10 plays of the day. We got our top 10 power earnings gaps. eBay with a nice PEG up 18%. 250% above average daily volume. Look at that, nice little base here, a little flat base pattern. Like I say, it doesn't have to be a big base, any kind of a base. And that thing is up nearly 13% last week. So congrats to the eBay longs. MicroStrategy, not so lucky. They reported this is a proxy on Bitcoin. You might as well just buy Bitcoin. Carvana had a nice response. And if you could look at the weekly chart here, this is a weekly review. It was up 11% last week. So I know it sold off Friday, but you don't have to feel sorry for the longs. This had a nice base here and then a kind of an elongated handle, I would say, with the 3 weeks tight. And then last week powered higher, like I said, 11%. This is one that I'm watching as it made new highs and then pulled back. It might decide to form a base here. I'm not saying this is, and people saying, oh, it's a top, it's a blow off top. No, probably not. But if it wants to form a base, this is one that I'm watching and definitely a power earnings gap higher. Sanmina, a big surprise to me. Congrats to the Solar Brothers. Big move last week following earnings, 23%. Yeah, it gave some back, like everything else on Friday, 4%. CLS, this is one of the stronger groups. Sanmina, Jabil, Celestica, this just a lot of strong stocks in this group. Gapped higher on Tuesday following its earnings report on Monday. Yeah, 17% move, pulled back to the 5 on Friday. No harm, no foul there. That looks fantastic. But that's not gapping out of a base. This thing's already extended by the time this thing moves higher. And some people, you can draw lines anywhere. And I know some people are saying this is a blow off top. It broke above its channel line, which, short term, yes. But if you look, longer term, you could say, not so much. So it just depends where you're drawing your lines from. All right. Yeah, I wouldn't get too. This is a leader, and if they continue to deliver strong earnings, this thing's going to go higher. But yeah, if you think it broke above its trend line, on a daily especially, then maybe it does form a base here. Nothing wrong with that. Below 200. All right. I better get moving because I have a lot of stuff to get to. Biotech stocks. This one gapped up after earnings, ALNY. Think I had another one, WGS, another biotech stock. Had a good response to earnings on Wednesday, but closed near the lows of the session there, the daily range, 16% of that huge range, 89 to 106. And then Wednesday had a bigger move, nearly a 13% move on Wednesday and closed in the higher half of the range and then had an inside day on Thursday. This one is very intriguing to me as it just allowed the 5 EMA to catch up on Friday. So this is one that I'm watching in the drug sector. TMDX, medical product stock had a nice earnings, but it got rejected like Matombo at the 50 here. So it needs to power through there. Just an inside day on Friday. It was up 1.3% while the index was down 2.24%. So TMDX showing relative strength. It's got an RS rating of 91. So I'm watching Transmedics to, undercut this 50 and rally back through. You can see it's just consolidating in a base here. Big gains from 62 to 145. So it just form a base and just one to watch. It's got the growth that you want to see, and a growth stock. Roblox reported another one that people are saying a blow off top. I don't know. Pull back to its 5 on Friday. We'll see with Roblox. Definitely another one that I'm watching though, and that's why I'm posting it. Robinhood, this is one that I own. I had to sell. I mean, this thing went from 29 to 113.44, 242% move in the short period of time. This is why I like swing trading, growth stocks, because you just need the meat of that trade. You don't need the whole 242%. Heck, if you just bought it at 66.91, call it 67, and ran it up to, 100, that's a nice gain, right? But, it made that high 2 weeks ago. And this is what I'm talking about, being more cautious. It made that high 113.44 2 Fridays ago. And then it's just been consolidating in the base ever since. And it made a lower low here on Friday, 93.36. So if just thing just wants to consolidate in a base for 5 or 6 or 8 weeks, I'm fine with that. But it's definitely one that I'm watching. I sold it because I'm not the type. I know myself. I cannot sit through a base building process. Well, this thing's going sideways down, building a base. There's going to be other stocks ripping higher, and I'm going to use my capital to buy those stocks, hopefully. We all have dreams. STX, dreams are free, as my friend used to say. This one had a nice run, reported earnings, and it undercut the 21, but just hang on like a cat on a shelf, right? Hung on to the 21 on Wednesday and then rallied like 6.5% on Thursday, inside day on Friday. Another one to watch there at 152. I like Seagate. They're delivering strong sales and earnings growth, which, as a growth stock investor, swing trader, I like Builder. I'm watching the home builders too. This one's below the 200, so I'm not as interested in this one, but it did pull back to the 50 on earnings, found support and bounced Thursday, closed a tick above the 21 there, and 6.1% above the 50. So it pulled back to the 50, and I got to go to maybe a 5-minute chart there. There's your sell off in the morning, the pullback to the 50, and that's what I call a bounce off the 50. That is definitely institutional support. And what did it do on Friday? It rallied higher, 2.5%. So that's the type of stuff you want to see during pullbacks. Where is it finding support? Builder first source. I know it's below the 200, but 137.21, I'm interested. So I'm watching Builder and some of the home builders, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Generac, these power companies, we just do not have enough power in this country to do what we want to do in regards to data centers. But you can see this cup with handle breakout. 23% move last week for this electrical power equipment stock. Still within a base, though. That standard buy point's at 195. Definitely one that I'm watching. It's extended from its moving averages, though. You got to wait for that to catch up. It had an inside day on Friday. So, these earnings reports are keeping me busy and giving me a lot of stuff to watch. Starbucks, you can avoid this one. Big red numbers, I avoid. There's just too much competition in the coffee space with Dunkin' Donuts and a lot of these artisan mom and pop places. And then, Dutch Bros is coming on strong and showing a lot of growth. These guys, I know they have the new CEO, but it's kind of a demographic shift where the younger people don't want to go to the coffee house where their, mom and grandma, or excuse me, grand persons and their parents are, going to. They sit around, drink coffee, work on their Wi-Fi, and, it's just a different business model. The CEO needs to change it, but he can't help the demographic shift. So I would avoid Starbucks. CRS has been a big leader for a long time, not so much anymore. Slice the 50. These red numbers, they bug me. So yeah, I don't like that. But it has been a big winner. And one that I really like, NVT, power earnings gap. This one could be in our report. This is in that category with Vertiv, Generac power equipment. Stock had this 3 weeks tight pattern within the base and broke out, 14.5% last week. They had earnings on Friday, and that's the response to earnings on Friday. Closed at the high of the daily range on a day where the Nasdaq was down 2.24%. Excuse me, that is one not to be ignored, Dan. All right, that's it for earnings. I showed you the weakness of those leading growth stocks. I showed you the Nasdaq, how we're seeing these weak closes, strong opens and weak closes. I showed you all the earnings reports that I was interested in, and now I'm going to go to some themes. And the top groups in 2025 have been gold. You might not like gold. These guys reported on Friday. It was up, I'm just pointing it out. It's been thought of as an inflation hedge over the years, but I'm just observing what's strong in the market, and these stocks are strong. You could look at, one of these comparison charts and go back to, the beginning of the year. And this thing's up 111%, and Agnico is another one that's up a lot this year. Harmony, WPM, these things are up a lot. Okay, all these gold stocks, 60% or more. I think we'll all take that. I know people don't like these gold stocks, but I'm just showing you strength. Do I own any of them? No, I don't. NEM reported last week, another strong stock. I showed you AEM. They reported Friday. These things are just strong, set up in bases. So I'm not going to ignore them. Maybe I'll buy one of them kind of as a hedge, kind of park some money there during this correction. These things will probably do well. I'm not opposed to oil and gas or gold stocks or commodities in general if the market wants to correct. Anyway, that's just an observation, but the leading group is the alternative energy group. You can see this number one. These stocks have been super strong. And somebody, texted, and they didn't text me. They DM'd me on Twitter and said, "What's wrong with GEV? It's selling off. It's crashing and burning." I said, "No, this thing looks totally fine. It just in the morning, it came down, gap lower, a lot of panic sellers. But what happened? It just, that's why I say sometimes it's just good to go take a walk, walk your dog, go swim, go hike, work in the garden, whatever you do, whatever your hobby is. Golf is mine. Just don't watch the screen all the time. GEV looks fine. This is my largest holding. Yeah, I'll sell it if it, shows more weakness. But it's a leading stock and the leading group. I don't see any sell signs yet. Yeah, it did make a low there of 632 on Friday, and I'm definitely watching that 21 relationship there, 594. So if it pulls back to that area, I'll probably adios muchachos. It found support there recently on July 22nd. And that was when it was 537. On Friday, it's 632. So higher lows, so to me, it's not doing anything wrong. Oklo, another one in this group, and a huge performer this year, sold off on Friday. And then when I had on my Reddit list, the one that I choose, this has been the leading performer in this group, and it sold off last week to the tune of like 13%. Yeah. So, man, I can really pick them right. All right. That's enough for that group. They look fine. They've been doing really well. VST reports this week, and Talon, it's not in the alternative energy group, it's in the electric power group, and this one's just been powering higher as well. So these energy stocks, you gotta watch them. If you like something a little slower, American Electric Power, it looks pretty good. This is more of a slower mover, a low beta stock, but it pays, big dividend, 3.5% just to hold it. Yeah, you can see the beta here. It's just a slower mover. It just depends on your personality and what you like. I like the faster movers because I'm a swing trader, but there's nothing wrong with holding these stocks that pay nice dividends and give you a little appreciation over time. All right, the other group, oh, I wanted to show the steel group has been a top group, but man, these things have fallen out. ATI reported Friday and, oh man, or Thursday, excuse me. And yeah, not a good response. So that group is probably going to be out of the top performers. It's already been ranked down to 9. So, all right, I'm going to move on from those themes into something that is intriguing me, and that's the housing group. Um, they reported, good response to the report, undercut the 200, now has rallied back above it, gently pulled back with lighter volume to a moving average, the 200. the downtrending 200, and then popped on Friday while the index was weak. I'm not saying this showing relative strength because the RS rating's 51, but that's over time. I think shorter term, we're looking at the shorter term moving averages rallying through the longer term moving averages there. You can see the 21. So this thing might be, it looks like it's trending higher, probably in anticipation of lower interest rates. That's what the bond market is telling us. So I'm not going to argue. If these things want to go higher, I'm all for it. DHI, another one in this home builder group, same thing. Undercut the 200, rallied back above it on earnings. That's a nice 17% move. The 5 and the 21 now trading through that slower term 200 moving average. It was up, showing relative strength, while the index was down. The RS rating is only 55, but that's more of a longer term rating. So those moving averages are telling me this thing wants to trend higher. So I'm not going to ignore that. I like them better than Lennar because Lennar is still below the 200. KB Homes below the 200. So the two that I'm looking at is Pulte and Horton in the home builder group. All right, moving on. INSM, I got to do some drugs for you. This one, it has a PDUFA early this month of August. It could be this weekend, it could be this week, it could be next week. And you never know when the FDA decides to make their announcement on a drug approval or a rejection. If it gets approved, this sucker's going higher, as Peter Lynch likes to say. We'll be living in the penthouse. And if it's rejected or declined, or they get a CLR letter, this is going to be in the outhouse. I don't want to live in the outhouse, but I do have a little position in this one because I'm expecting an approval from a little more lenient FDA these days. And I think, the drug is, qualifies for approval. Anyway, that's one that I'm watching. Made a new high. It's got that, this is short little base here, 5 weeks, and 106.83 would be the buy point. They're going to report earnings this week. They're going to have news. This thing's going to go one way or the other, below 100, or, maybe scream up to 125 or 130. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I did mention TGTX making higher lows forever and a day. What, 21, 27, 28, 31, 32, 34, 03, 34, 36, and on Friday, pulled back to the 200 and made a lower low for the first time in a year of 34.03. That tells me that investors are cautious into the print on Monday morning. I think they're going to have a fine print. Their drug Briumvi's taking market share, and I think this is just a little bit of caution. Yeah, we'll see on Monday how they report and how the stock responds. But getting back to 39.73 would be my expectation on a decent report. All right. BBIO, they report this week on the 5th, which is Tuesday. And this thing's just been on a heater, man, 31 up to 47. BBIO looks pretty darn good. RYTM, this one's Rhythm Pharmaceuticals, gapped higher, now pulled back on lighter volume to its moving average. So that one intrigues me as well. They report on Tuesday, which I'm giving away all my reports here. Gilead, set up in a base here, trading tight within the base, showing the ability to move, right? This Gilead can move. It's been consolidating, hasn't moved much recently. And a lot of these stocks have not participated in this, massive AI, essentially, an AI rally from the Liberation Day of April 4th, but maybe now it's their turn, right? All right, I'm going to move on from the drug stocks, go to the last group, FinTech, Cooper. This thing's on a heater. I don't know what's going on with Cooper. It's a mortgage lender. I thought the mortgage business was slower. Maybe they're just taking market share and everybody's going to Cooper. I don't know why, but I'm just observing the action here in the markets here. Dave, broke out, rallied hard. I mean, talking what, 65 to 286, undercut the 50 recently, and now rallied back above it on Friday, found support there. The 50 was at 221.92. It pulled back to 216 and closed at 232, $16 off the low. Yeah, that's a nice balance for Dave. SEZL, these are going to report this week. That's on the 6th, and Dave, SEZL on the 7th. So we can look forward to that on Wednesday and Thursday. This one did not undercut the 50, found support a little stronger than day 24 to 186. Thank you very much. And that's why you like to swing trade, right? And even if you didn't get the meat of that trade, just say you bought it at $80 here, right here on the breakout. That's still a nice, you sold it here at 150, right? So, 80 or 160, that's a two bagger, right? We'll take that. And that's what I say. The ratio, is if you're 50-50 wins and losses and you're constantly taking, 5% losses or less, and then you get one of these, you can afford some more losses. You don't have to be 50-50. You can be 40-60, and you can still do very well in the market when you catch these big moves. And that's what happens, when the index is ripping like we've had it. That's when you want to be long, exposed to the market. And at this point, you want to reduce exposure because we're coming out of this phase here. All right, and the last one is SoFi. SoFi, they reported earnings had a nice move higher, and then did the old okey doke with the secondary. We don't like the okey doke with the secondary, and it pulled back to its 21 on Friday, down 6%. So yeah, kind of not the best. All right, a couple defense names. Northrop Grumman trading higher. Curtis Wright. They had news on Friday finding support at the 50. That that catches my eye. HWM reported pull back to the 50. Found support at the 50. Was up 2.5% on Friday, while the Nasdaq was struggling. And ERJ, another Brazilian defense name. Yeah, undercut the 50 and rallied back through it. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Try to cover as much as I could, just trying to observe the fish tank, see what the fish are doing. And thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up, except in honor of the great Steve Jobs. I have one more thing, just a few trades from last week. Had some winners, had some losers. That's part of trading. When the index is down, what did I say, 2 something percent last week, you're going to expect your growth stocks to sell off a little bit. This is one of my winners from last week, ALAB. You can see this clear consolidation pattern had a lot of trouble at 100, but once it blasted through, it showed me that institutions are interested in ALAB, and that's institutional footprint. So we got long, and last week it was up, like I just showed you, more than 7%. So that's a nice trade. App 11 was a good trade until Friday when it was down 3%, but it's trading tight within the base, near the moving averages. I think all three moving averages here, very tight, within 1.5%. And then Thursday bounced, but Friday gave some back, like every other growth stock pretty much. INSM, I showed you that one earlier. That one was on my ready list. That had a nice week as well. That was a winning trade for us, up 4.5%, while the index was down 2.2%. Very nice. LEU, I showed you that one earlier. That was a bummer. That was one of my trades. This thing's been up all year. The week I decide to put it on my ready list, it falls out 13%. Oh well, I have an uncanny ability to do that. And then Rubric, I got the old okey doke on this one. It traded above a downtrend line, sucked me in, even though I knew the market was, kind of wobbling. So I bought it as it rallied up above the 50. Thought I was King Kong doing great. And then on Friday, what happened? It had that reversal on Thursday. And then Friday, yeah, it made this, high within the base of 97. So you're going, oh, that 93 area is a good buy point. It's up to 97. Yoo-hoo, I'm in the money. And then what happened on Friday, we had the trap door down to 83. So it's adios muchachos, and you have to be quick. Take your losses, right? Move on. Give this thing some more time to set up in a base. They don't report until September. And you could see this, this is the old flag. Like, I want to go higher, but nope, there's sellers in here. And I think this thing is going to go higher. I'm not going to wait till 103, but I'm watching this one closely, hopefully not too closely. But I believe it still needs time to build out the right side of this base here, from wherever it was right here. Yeah. And it'll probably do this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Buyers and sellers, that's all we have, supply and demand, until it breaks through and breaks above that 103 level. Once again, all right, I'm looking forward to this week. Earnings reports. I mentioned TGTX Monday morning. We also have AXSM reporting Monday morning. Looking forward to that. And then in the afternoon, Hims and Hers. And I like this company, but they have to deliver the goods. They've been battling with Novo Nordisk. Palantir reports Monday after the close. So does Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre. AMD on Tuesday, SMCI on Tuesday. That'll be a busy afternoon. We got Caterpillar in the morning Tuesday, and then ALAB, the one I just showed you. We'll see how we can't have CAT and ALAB at the same time. There you go. ALAB reports. And you kind of put some of these things together, with Vertiv's report. I think they're going to have an outstanding report. I don't know what the index, excuse me, I don't know what the stock is going to do, or the index for that matter, but I think they're going to have a strong report on Wednesday. Then on Tuesday, we're going to hear from AppLovin. I just showed you that chart. I think they're going to have a killer report. I don't know how the stock's going to respond. All these companies can do is deliver the goods. Dutch Bros reports. Oh, man, this thing, Wall Street does not believe in their story. So they're going to have to deliver the goods. Uber reports Tuesday. Fortinet, looking forward to that. Below the 200. Losing my voice. IONQ. And then Thursday, Lilly and VST. I mentioned that one earlier. The trade desk, I'm interested in that. Rocket Lab reports. Pull back to the 21. A couple others that I'm interested, SMR, NewScale, and a defense play that has been super strong, KTOS. Pull back to the 21. Looks like a little bull wedge pattern here, doesn't it? From 61, a little flag, if you will, or just a little channel down. So we'll see next week. Yeah, I'm going to be busy again. Lots of earnings to report. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up.